What's going on, music producers? It's Curtis King of CurtisKingBeats.com, and today we're going to discuss 4 mistakes or even 4 reasons why music producers' beats don't bang. What's going on with your drums, man? Do they sound like you're flicking nipples? Well, let's talk about why your drums are not slapping the way that you want them to be slapping, as we say on the West Coast. There's 4 primary reasons that I have noticed from me doing my critiques of other beats, from me being around other producers. Everybody has their own style and their own habits. This by no means is being said as the perfect way to mix your drums. But I want to go over some mistakes. And the way we're going to do that is basically I'm going to simulate some of the things that I've seen producers do. And then I'm going to show you how I would correct that individually. We're going to break this down into 4 different reasons. The first reason, sound selection. A lot of producers are dealing with only having stock sounds, which is completely understandable. We've all been there. I've had to mess around with stock sounds, but even having stock sounds, there's still good decisions that you can make when you're picking the right sounds. Now, if we go right here through some of these FL Studio stock sounds, we know that it leaves a lot to the imagination. A lot of these drums are okay, they're decent. Let's go ahead and run through some. Like initially, just from hearing these, and I don't use these sounds, when I hear these, some of these have a little bit too much air on the top of them. Some of these are like super techno-y, and you can really tell immediately when you hear it. You don't want to hear that a million times within a hip-hop beat. So sound selection is generally the biggest issue. And I see a lot of producers seem like they're settling for sounds when they're not the sounds that you're hearing in modern hip hop music. So that's the first issue with sound selection. I've picked some sounds that I think are good sounds from these actual stock FL Studio sounds. And I'm going to show you how a lot of producers use them and then how I would fix that particular mistake. Now, for instance, let's use this example, okay? So this is my example of what a producer would take a snare. This is what it sounds like by itself. Typical 808 snare. I feel like a lot of producers would take this and to make it sound more full, they would either jack up the volume. A lot of producers don't even jack up the volume. They'll just take it through some reverb, right? Some very minimal EQing. They basically jack up on the parametric equalizer to that high frequency, that treble frequency, which you don't want to jack it up that high, and then it'll take the reverb and it'll end up sounding like this right here. How many beats have you heard from producers that have that sound of the snare where it loses all of its life? So the way that I would correct that, this is the snare as it is as a stock sound, okay? First thing I would start messing around with is what pitch do I want it in? Now, you can mess around with this 2 different ways. One way that I suggest so that you can mess around in different keys is to take this range, this semitone range, all the way up to 48. So you're messing around with the full scape of what FL Studio offers you. Okay? Now, you see how that feels like a more full snare? All you did was take the pitch down. There's a lot of A$AP Rocky type beats that you hear with that. Like Clams Casino really took that sound and did something crazy with it. But you're already getting more out of that snare. So that's the first thing I would look around at. Another thing that you want to pay attention to, which is sometimes the first thing for me, is how you're shaping that actual snare. Now, this is going to make a lot more sense when we get to the kick, but the way that you shape the snare is really going to have an effect on how it bangs and how much it's basically interfering with other frequencies that are within your drum loop. So when I say shape the snare, basically you can tighten it up and you can control the release of the snare. So as it is, that's it all together. But if I tighten this up, take down the hold right here, take the decay down, the sustain, and the release, you get more of a snappier sound. Now, we don't want to use this on this particular one. I actually want to bring the hold up. We're actually going to have it go right here. So that's one thing that you want to pay attention to. Like I said, that has to do more so with kicks, but that's important. Now, let's go ahead and just play this out, and I'm going to show you basically some of the things that I would do to mix this snare even better. Okay, so as it is, we haven't changed any volume or anything like that. But this good snare is right here. Put going to take this parametric equalizer. Something I like to do is look for the sweet spots of this snare and even some of the hidden sweet spots. And the way that I do that is that I basically audition every one of these frequencies to see if I hear something special. Now, you don't want all of them to be jacked up and, in different places, because then you get a snare that takes up too much room in the frequency range. So what I'm going to do is basically play the snare, okay? There's something special here, obviously. You see that line. A whole lot going on here, which means that it's already dominating in that frequency naturally. So something I do is I'll take this all the way up to see what that affects, and then I'll glide it back down to see how much of that frequency that I want to be up here. I don't really want too much of that, so I'll go ahead and reset it. I like some of that splash on top of the snare, so I'll keep that. I kind of want to stay out of this range because this is where you put your vocals at when people are recording over it. So if you're jacking these up too much, you're going to get in the way of the actual vocals and be competing with the mid-tone vocals. So I'll leave that alone for right now. Jack this one. Already, you're hearing more of a thump, even out of the snare. Feels louder too, and we still below the 0 threshold, so that's good. So that's an important thing that you want to pay attention to, is just the EQing of it. I haven't even added reverb, because the thing about it is reverb is literally to give your sound more space. And there's certain sounds that you would want to do that on. Like, for instance, I might want to add, let's go back down to the vintage kick. And I'm using these stock sounds specifically for producers who only have the stock sounds. I think it's important that you see that you can still use that. That's not what I'm looking for. Where are we at? Boom, legacy. Legacy. Hip hop. Actually, I want to go to the vintage. So we are now looking for a snap. It's not there. I think it's in here. There we go. So I would take this snare, and even though it's a snare that I don't necessarily like the sound of, we're going to shape it like I showed you before. Tighten that up on there, because all I want is that. I know it sounds crazy right now, but wait till we actually put this on the end of one of these snares. So this snare is the one we've been actually mixing already. Copy this pattern over. I mean, we really don't have to do that, but we're going to play these together, and you're going to notice the snap is right on top. Now, you can barely hear this, right? And that's another issue that a lot of producers have, is that they layer sounds that don't have a specific space where they can basically be heard to the naked ear. Now, what I want to do is go over here to the channel properties and go here to the miscellaneous functions, and I'm going to shift. I'm going to shift this slightly off time so that the snare falls off the back end, or the snap falls off the back end of the snare. Now, listen to this. This is with no shift. Hear that? Now that snare feels like it has a lot more going on with it, and in turn, the beat starts to bang more. We're not even talking about the kick yet, man. This is how exciting this stuff is. So I'm going to leave that as is. Let's go over here to the kick. Now, here's a kick that I see a lot of producers will use. It's a very heavy kick. It's a kick that really what you want, even though it sounds good, you want just that thump, that initial thump that comes in, right? The way that we're going to do that, very similar to how we did the snare, we're going to take this all down, tighten up. Now, this is supposed to be the bad kick, and I can use it here, but basically producers will just leave that as is, okay? So let me actually transfer this stuff over, my bad. Transfer this. Okay, tighten this up. So now what I'm going to do, I don't want to turn the volume up quite yet, but I want you to get the idea of what I'm talking about. So now as it is, sounds like it's still a very basic kick. I'll go here to the mixer. Let's go to the good kick. And let's take the parametric equalizer too. Now there's something going on with this. Let me see. Did I layer this one too high or something? Was this double on there? Maybe this one is different. Let's see. Boom. All good. We'll figure this out. So go from here. Already you're getting more of the thump out of this. You feel that? Okay. Now, I don't like that airy sound, so I need to cut that frequency coming from this high end off. So we're going to take this particular 7 frequency, this band 7. We're going to make it a low pass. Okay. And then we're going to make it a steep 8 so that it basically just drops down out of that frequency pretty fast. So let's play it. Wow, it was really just the bad kick sitting in top of there. Excuse me. Anyways, so we get more thump out of this. I'm enjoying that. Something I would do is I would take this one down to a lower. Tighten this up even more. Now, when it comes to layering kicks, something that I like to do is either take another kick to put on top of this, but the kick that I'm going to put on top of this is not going to be an identical frequency kick. It's going to be a kick that is not as bassy, but it has more of a thump or has more of a high thump to it. And you could do this with the same kick actually, but we're going to have to make 2 changes to it. Now, the first thing is obviously we got to take this kick and I'm going to take it actually off of that particular EQing. We're not going to EQ it the same way. And I'm going to take it up to 48 semitones on the pitch range. Okay. And I'm going to now layer this kick over it. Take the picture. Or we can manually do that here. Now, layering is not going to do enough because they're falling on the same exact place. The same way that snare and that snap got hidden, same situation here. So what you want to do is you want to slide that bad boy off the grid. Not that much, but enough to where you hear a difference. So let's play around with it. You feel that? Now you're getting more bang out of just the kick and the snare. All you did was change the timing and then you change the EQing slightly. We haven't even done EQing on this second layer of kicks, but it adds another effect to it. Now, that's important. Something I want to show you here. Now, we're going to take pretty basic pattern. Now, that's typically what you hear on the bad example. Like a lot of producers would take these hi-hats and then they think their job is done. But once again, that frequency is going as long as it wants to, and it's running your beat. So what you want to do, same thing here. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do the shaping here, but you can do a cut itself. But a lot of producers would do that, and then that's the end of their job. But no, you want to do more with that. So you're going to take this. I'm going to copy that over. I'm actually going to shape this because I want to show you the effect that it has. Because the reason we're including the hi-hats is because depending on the texture of your hi-hats, it can really affect the way that your bounce, if it affects your bounce, right? And then it also affects the texture of when the beat is hitting on that 1 and hitting on that 2, the kick and the snare. So let's check it out. So that's with no kind of EQing going on. Another little fine thing they like to do to kind of mess around with things is I will go over to the time settings, which is right here on the sample settings. Take this and extend it out. What I did was basically highlight it, push Control L. And what I might do is add like a little bit of texture. Let's see what this looks like. Now let's do something a little bit more stylish. I'll take this, mess around with the velocity a little bit. Okay, so we're getting a little bit something going on with there. It obviously messes around with the pattern and the rhythm of the beat, but we're gonna take that and you can do some interesting things with this. This is where I would actually start to add maybe a little bit of reverb just to give it a little bit more life. We're gonna EQ it. Don't leave these things naked. I'm gonna cut off this frequency. Something else interesting that you can do with this is you can actually change these particular settings down here and just treat this as your bass, your mid, and your high. Something I've seen interesting that people do. Something I like to do as well with this is shift it off of that. Slightly being off time gives it a whole nother feeling as well, and it adds to the bang. Now, there would be no bang without the 808s. Let me tell you what most producers do when it comes to the 808s. We might have to actually solo this one. So I think what producers do, they take these 808s. Let's just have it come in. I think the first thing that they don't do is cut itself or even mess around with how long that 808 is going. So what you want to do is you want to come over here and shape this so that you control the 808. You're the producer. You control the 808. This is your beat, right? So sometimes you can leave a little tail in. I would like to leave a lot of hold just so I can get more out of that 808. But I think producers, sometimes they know this. Sometimes they do, right? But a lot of producers will kind of put 808s back and forth and they just distort over each other and they cloud out the whole mix. Something else that they'll do, I don't know why I keep editing the bad one as the good one, but something else that they'll do is, let's actually do this. We're gonna clone this and we're going to make this an 808 bad. Okay, they'll take an 808, right? They won't shape it. Let's exit out of here. They won't shape it, but they'll take the bad 808. Okay, bad 808 right here. Parametric equalizer. Let's take it. Let's actually make a pattern for it. Okay. They'll go to the parametric equalizer and do this. That beat's done. And they'd be like, yeah, that beat's done. Nah, fam, that beat is nowhere near done. So that's a mistake that I see them make. They even mix these frequencies, but the thing about it is you don't want your bass clouding over these frequencies because this is where your piano keys are, the vocals, the strings, and I know you hear beats sometimes that sound distorted and you think, well, why can't mine be like, no, that's an issue. You don't want to do that. So it may feel like it's banging, but really what it is just distorting. So let's fix that particular mistake. Let's take this and let's go to the good 808. And let me just show you the way that I would do it. So let's take these off so they don't overlap. So this is just this. And if you hear, there's like a weird frequency at the end of it. Another reason why I gotta cut this. All right, let's take it down a few octaves. Okay, we're gonna take this to the good 808. To get this EQ. We're not gonna jack this up. First thing we gotta do is the low pass filter. This one won't be as steep. Now I'm getting pure 808 right now, which is what I wanted. First I affect the bass, then the sub. I actually like where it's at. Now, a quick little trick when it comes to layering and making these sounds bang with one another is that the same way we slid that snap off of the snare, we need to slide this 808 off of the kick, because right now it's going to sound like they're competing for the same space. So one trick that I do for that is I like to slide that off. Take this off, but as you can tell, these are just the stock sounds. There's so much more you can do when you upgrade your sounds, which I don't want to underestimate that, but I want to show you there's things that you can do right now with the stock sounds. No excuse. You just got to get creative with what you're doing. So once again, to go over these 4 things or 4 mistakes that need to be corrected: your sound selection producers, your misusing of the reverb and the volume and just jacking things up. You're not EQing the sweet spots of your drums, which is super important. And then also the last one is not properly shaping and layering your drums. I hope this video helped you. If you have any other questions, please, first of all, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below. We're a great community here that supports one another. There's folks in here who have even greater advice for maybe your particular music within the comment section. Engage with them. It's very important. But these are 4 reasons that I feel that your drums are not banging, even if you got stock sounds. Hopefully this helps you correct them. If you need drum sounds and you're looking for something that can get you started, go over to CurtisKingBeats.com. I have a series called Big Drums Knock Volume 1, 2, and 3. It should definitely help you on your way. Once again, this is Curtis King of CurtisKingBeats.com. Have a good one.